Last January, the World Health Organization said, test, test, test. We're not going to reach the levels of testing needed, as said by the World Health Organization, until next year. The government's corona response has been essentially ideological. They've wasted so much time. So many people have suffered from corona as a result, and so many have died as a result. Their default position appears to be to hand any necessary contracts out to the private sector rather than properly fund local authorities or local public health authorities to undertake track and trace. The results are very clear. Where it's been done by the private sector, there's been a 58% track and trace follow-up. Where it's been done by local public health authorities, it's 98%. Those figures say it all. Many people have died as a result of the indolence, incompetence and chumocracy of the Conservative government. 1.5 billion pounds of private sector contracts have been handed out to companies that have no experience, no track record and no record of efficiency in dealing with public sector contracts. Yet the common thread running through it all is that they've donated money to the Tory party in the past. What we have is a government that is using the corona crisis to privatise our public services, and at the same time the majority of the population are seeing lower wages, lower living standards, higher prices and deep fear and worry about the future. The last 10 years has seen a big attack on public sector wages and conditions. And many are working well beyond their agreed terms, time and what they actually do. They're covering up for jobs that have disappeared through redundancies. Yet at the same time, throughout the corona crisis, it's the public sector that's stepped up to the plate. The care workers, the health workers, the local authority workers, all the emergency services have done a tremendous, huge job to help people and support them. And what's the response to the government? They're now proposing a wage freeze once again in the public sector. So those people that have kept us safe and delivered for us are now going to be punished with a wage freeze as the months and years go on. The contrast, of course, with the attitude of the government towards the private sector. They are using the corona crisis as a time to privatise and outsource our public services, further damaging the conditions of public sector workers and employing people in those new private sector jobs on lower wages. This government doesn't care about the inequality they're creating. If you're on minimum wage and you're furloughed on 80%, you're getting even less than minimum wage. If you're told to survive on statutory sick pay, you can't. Boris Johnson himself admits he couldn't live on statutory sick pay. This government is impoverishing the poorest, hitting the most vulnerable communities the hardest, and at the same time handing out contracts to their friends in very big business. We have COVID millionaires exploiting this situation. What we need is a government that invests for the future, that reduces inequalities, that improves healthcare and housing throughout our society. We need to oppose what this government is doing. We need to demand investment for the future, demand wage rises for those in the public sector that have delivered so much for all of us. And we need a government that recognises the only way out of this crisis is by investing in and including all people. We have got to change course. It's up to the entirety of the labour movement, of all of us, to stand firm against what this government is doing to our people in our society. They sounded really angry there in the background. That's not a bad thing. That's no bad thing, actually.